In a city that never slept, where glass towers reflected the burning sun by day and the shimmering lights of ambition by night, there lived a man named Adekunle. At 28, he had already achieved what most spent a lifetime chasing: a sprawling empire, luxury cars that gleamed like jewels, and a reputation for both brilliance and generosity. Yet despite all the wealth surrounding him, there was a void in his heart, a longing for someone who would love him not for his fortune, but for the man behind it. It was on a humid Tuesday morning, under the relentless sun, that he first saw Bukola. She moved with an effortless grace among the dusty streets of her neighborhood, her hands calloused from labor, yet her posture unbroken by poverty. She carried herself with dignity, and there was a brightness in her eyes that drew him in, a light untainted by the harshness of life. She had never seen him before, but when their eyes met, something passed silently between them, a spark that neither could name, yet both could feel. Adekunle's curiosity quickly became fascination. Who was this girl who could smile while carrying such burdens? Who could balance her dreams with responsibility for family and neighbors? Over the following days, he found ways to encounter her again, at the market, at a community charity event, even in the library where she helped younger children with their lessons. And each time, he watched her, learning more about her heart than any conversation could reveal. He began to help her subtly at first: a small scholarship to continue her studies, an offer for a job at one of his companies, even though she had no experience. She refused at first, polite and hesitant, insisting that she didn't want to take advantage of him. But he persisted, framing it as a way to give her the chance she deserved. Gradually, she accepted. Then came the gifts: a car, a house, even a new home for her family. Adekunle spared no expense, his heart swelling at the sight of her joy. Her parents cried, overwhelmed by gratitude, and her siblings danced in the streets. Bukola herself seemed to glow, a happiness that filled every room she entered. For a time, Adekunle believed he had found the love he sought, a heart untouched by greed. But shadows have a way of creeping into even the brightest places. Late at night, alone in his penthouse overlooking the city, Adekunle stared out at the skyline and whispered a question he could not silence. Does she love me, or everything I give her? At first, he tried to push the thought aside. He focused on her laughter, the way she said his name with warmth, the small gestures that seemed genuine. But then subtle signs began to appear. The way she glanced at his car keys with curiosity beyond politeness, the way her family's eyes lingered on his bank statements during casual visits, the way she sometimes asked for favors with a tone that felt less like gratitude and more like entitlement. His mind grew restless. At night, he imagined scenarios that made him uneasy. Bukola's celebrating birthdays with gifts she hadn't earned, her family enjoying privileges they didn't deserve, her heart drawn more to his fortune than to him. The doubt gnawed at him relentlessly, until one night, alone in the dark, he made a decision. He would test her, not subtly, not with gentle hints, but with a plan so daring that only someone desperate to know the truth would attempt it. He would strip away everything he had given her, everything he had built for her family, everything she had ever relied on, and pretend he was destitute. Only then could he see the real Bukola, the woman's heart beneath her gratitude, her loyalty beyond wealth. And so, in the quiet hours, he began to lay the groundwork. Publications were contacted, airtime was booked, and carefully scripted interviews were written. Headlines would declare the collapse of his empire. Television screens would show him a man without a home or car. The city would witness the fall of a billionaire. And in all of this, Bukola's reaction would reveal the truth. Even as he planned, a strange thrill coursed through him. What would she do? Would she welcome him, despite his apparent poverty? Or would her heart reveal a hunger for wealth he could no longer provide? The thought kept him awake, heart racing, a mix of fear and anticipation dancing in his veins. Unknown to him, someone else had noticed the unusual way Bukola's eyes sometimes lingered on his actions, the subtle hesitations in her smile. Kemi, the family maid, quiet and observant, had been watching him with curiosity. She noticed the small signs, the secretive phone calls, the intensity in his gaze when he thought no one was watching. Kemi had always been loyal to Bukola, but even she began to sense that something unusual was unfolding, something that might change all their lives forever. As the sun rose over the city, casting its golden light over towers and rooftops. Adekunle felt a mixture of dread and excitement. His life, already filled with wealth, power, and privilege, was about to enter a realm of uncertainty, of test and trial, of heart versus greed. And in that uncertain dawn, a single truth became clear. The game had begun, and there was no turning back. The city was abuzz with the shocking news. Newspapers blared headlines that seemed impossible. Billionaire Adekunle loses everything, and from riches to ruin. Banks seize Adekunle's empire. Television anchors spoke gravely of his alleged downfall, replaying clips of his supposed despair. Even the social media world, hungry for scandal, erupted with disbelief. Friends, acquaintances, and strangers alike speculated endlessly. Behind this spectacle, Adekunle moved quietly, a man stripped of his outward grandeur but armed with a plan. Gone were the tailored suits, the polished shoes, the sleek cars. In their place, he wore plain clothes, carried a small, weathered bag, and moved with the humility of a man who had nothing to lose. His heart, however, carried a secret fire, the knowledge that every step he took was part of a test, a delicate unveiling of truth. The mansion that had once been his kingdom now felt like a stage, and the key player in this test was Bukola. Adekunle approached her, hesitantly at first, his voice measured. "Bukola," he began, his words almost swallowed by the tension in the air. I have nowhere else to go. May I stay with you?" Bukola's eyes widened. She looked at him, really looked, and for a moment, uncertainty flickered across her face. This was not the man who had built her family a home, who had showered her with gifts, who had made her life comfortable beyond measure. This was a man diminished, vulnerable, and seemingly powerless. "Stay with me," she repeated, her voice laced with disbelief. You want to live here? With me? After everything?" Adekunle nodded, the faintest tremor of emotion in his chest. "Yes, I have nowhere else. I only ask for shelter, nothing more." Her initial hesitation gave way to reluctant curiosity. Perhaps she saw a chance to assert control, perhaps she felt a flicker of pity, or perhaps she was simply intrigued by the mystery of his sudden downfall. In any case, she agreed. From the moment he crossed the threshold, Bukola began to assert herself. What started as small suggestions quickly became demands. Wash the clothes, clean the floors, prepare meals. And when he stumbled, dropping a plate, spilling water, her voice would rise, sharp and unforgiving. "Can't you even do this simple task properly? Are you really useless, or is this your natural state?" Adekunle endured silently, noting every word, every expression, every flicker of her eyes. His mind was a careful observer, cataloging cruelty and entitlement. Yet behind his calm exterior, a storm of emotion raged. Anger, sorrow, disbelief, but also a strange, simmering anticipation. Even Bukola's family, the very people he had lifted from poverty, joined the unkindness. Her father made passing comments about how a man without money is nothing. Her mother scolded him for trivial mistakes, and her siblings mocked him behind his back. Adekunle's generosity, once celebrated, now seemed to embolden their sense of entitlement. Amidst this torrent of disdain, there was Kemi, the maid. Quiet, watchful, and intelligent, she offered him small comforts. A warm cup of tea in the evening, a soft-spoken word of encouragement, a gentle glance that said, "I see your heart. I know who you are." Kemi's loyalty was a balm, reminding him that amidst cruelty and deceit, kindness still existed. One evening, after a particularly harsh day in which Bukola had laughed at his clumsiness and insulted his abilities in front of her friends, Adekunle stood outside under the dim glow of a street lamp. Kemi approached, holding a small blanket and a mug of tea. "Do not let their actions dim your heart," she whispered. "Kindness and loyalty are worth more than all their wealth." He accepted the blanket, sipping the tea in silence. "I gave her everything," he murmured, voice heavy with a mixture of sorrow and frustration. "I built her family a home. I gave her a life beyond her wildest dreams, and yet, she treats me like dirt." Kemi crouched beside him, her eyes steady. "Sometimes, the people we lift from the dirt repay us with dirt. But those who stand with us in hardship, they are the true treasures." Her words lingered, warming him against the chill of betrayal. In that quiet moment, Beneath the cold street lamp, Adekunle made a silent vow. He would endure, he would observe, and he would wait. The truth would reveal itself, and when it did, justice, tempered by patience and wisdom, would follow. Days turned into weeks. Bucola's behavior grew bolder. She mocked him openly, ordering him to perform menial tasks, laughing as he obeyed. She invited friends over, flaunting their laughter and wealth in front of him. He slept outside with the gateman on cold nights, shivering beneath the stars, while Bucola and her guests reveled inside the house he had once furnished. And yet, through all of this, Adekunle remained vigilant. He watched, noted, and waited. He observed the cracks in Bucola's facade, the subtle enjoyment she derived from his suffering. He observed the small acts of kindness Kemi offered quietly, without recognition or reward. And he waited for the day when patience, truth, and love would converge in a way that no deceit could undo. The mansion that had once been Adekunle's kingdom now felt like a cage. Every corner seemed to mock him. Every polished floor reminded him of the wealth he had lost, though only in appearance. Bucola had transformed before his eyes, her charm twisting into cruelty, her laughter now sharp enough to cut. She had discovered the strange satisfaction of power, and he was its unwilling audience. It began subtly at first. Bucola would criticize the way he washed clothes, the way he cleaned the kitchen, even the way he walked across the living room. "You spilled water again?" she snapped one morning, eyes narrowing like a hawk circling prey. "Honestly, I don't know why I let you stay here. You're hopeless." Adekunle endured. Every insult was logged in his mind, catalogued like a careful ledger. Each humiliation, each cutting word, was a piece of the truth he needed to see. Yet it was more than words. Bucola began bringing men into the house, flaunting their attention like a trophy. Adekunle was forced to sleep outside, huddled under thin blankets beside the gateman, while Bucola entertained guests in the warmth of the mansion he had once owned. He could hear their laughter through the walls, and sometimes, when he thought no one would see, his eyes filled with silent anger. But he held it in. He reminded himself that this was a test. Every cruel action she performed revealed the heart she had truly chosen to nurture, greed over gratitude, entitlement over love. Her family, too, became actors in this drama of humiliation. Bucola's parents, who had once been grateful for the home he had built, now seemed complicit in mocking him. "A man without money is nothing," her father would say, half in jest, half in scorn. Her siblings joined in, teasing him for his lack of employment, sneering at his so-called uselessness. Every laugh, every sarcastic comment, stung sharper than any knife. Yet amidst the cruelty, there was Kemi, the ever-watchful maid. Unlike Bucola and her family, she treated Adekunle with quiet respect. She would bring him a warm cup of tea in the evening, speak softly when he seemed despondent, and offer him encouragement without expectation. "Do not let their words break your spirit," she whispered one night as he shivered under a thin blanket outside the mansion gates. "True worth is not measured by what they see, but by who we are when no one is watching." One particularly harrowing night, Bucola invited friends over for an elaborate dinner party. Candles flickered, glasses clinked, and the air was filled with laughter and music. Adekunle, wearing tattered clothes and shivering in the cold, slept outside with the gateman. Every peal of laughter from inside pierced him, each joke at his expense a reminder of the deception he was enduring. He could have confronted Bucola. He could have exposed the truth. But he didn't. Not yet. Instead, he observed every smirk, every rolled eye, every patronizing gesture. The test demanded patience, and patience, he knew, would be rewarded. Kemi approached him that night, carrying a small blanket and a mug of tea. "You don't deserve this," she said softly, her eyes meeting his. "But one day, they will see the truth. Just wait." Her loyalty struck him more deeply than any fortune ever could. It was a quiet, unwavering force, a reminder that true love and respect do not come from wealth, titles, or appearances. They come from the heart. As the nights wore on, Bucola's cruelty escalated. She would demand that Adekunle perform tasks for her guests, fetching drinks, running errands, obeying her commands with no acknowledgement or gratitude. She would openly mock him, comparing his failure to other men she deemed successful. Her family followed suit, laughing at his misfortune, treating him as if he were less than human. And yet, despite it all, a strange calm settled over Adekunle. He found a rhythm in the hardship, a clarity in the silence between insults. Every slight, every humiliation, every cruel laugh was a brushstroke painting a clearer picture of Bukola's heart. And with Kemi by his side, he found strength he had never known, a quiet resolve that would carry him through the worst of the storm. One evening, as Bukola bragged about a lavish dinner with a man she hoped to impress, Adekunle quietly packed a small bag and slipped out of the mansion. He walked the empty streets with Kemi at his side, the city lights reflecting in puddles from a recent rain. "I have nothing," he said quietly, "yet I feel stronger than I ever did with wealth." Kemi smiled. "Because you have what they could never understand: heart, courage, and truth." In that moment, Adekunle realized that the true test was not only of Bukola's character, but of his own. And as he walked beneath the stars, he felt the first glimmer of hope, that someday, justice would come, and it would not merely punish cruelty, it would reward loyalty and love. The city was silent around them, yet the tension hung like a storm waiting to break. Little did Bukola know, her actions were weaving the very trap that would one day bring her downfall. The stage was set, and the final act was yet to unfold. Life outside Bukola's mansion was harsh, unrelenting, and brutally honest. The city no longer glimmered as a playground for Adekunle. Instead, its streets were a testing ground. Every morning greeted him with the blinding sun, sweat stinging his eyes as he carried heavy loads of packages for delivery. His hands, once accustomed to signing billion-dollar contracts, now bore blisters from lifting crates and washing cars for meager wages. Yet amidst the hardship, there was Kemi, ever watchful and steadfast. The young maid had stepped into his life at the precise moment he needed her. She became his confidant, his anchor, and at times, his anchor of laughter in the face of adversity. Even when they went without proper meals, she would find humor in their situation. Who knew delivering parcels could make a billionaire into a professional sprinter? She teased one afternoon, her grin lighting up the narrow alleyways of the city. Adekunle chuckled, though his chest ached with fatigue. "I never thought my life would come to this," he admitted, wiping sweat from his brow. "And yet, I feel more alive now than I ever did in a penthouse." Their days were grueling. Sun-baked roads, endless errands, and humiliating tasks became the norm. Adekunle sometimes carried carts heavier than he thought possible, occasionally tripping and spilling packages. Children on the street would giggle, pointing at the man in tattered clothes, while Kemi would quietly pull him aside, murmuring, "Ignore them. They see the surface, not the heart beneath." Evenings were no relief. They slept in a tiny rented room above a cramped workshop, the air thick with the smell of oil and dust. The modesty of their surroundings could not hide the warmth growing between them. Amid flickering candlelight, Adekunle and Kemi shared stories of their pasts. He spoke of the opulence he had known, the mountains of money that could not buy him peace, the loneliness behind the walls of wealth. She spoke of her childhood, her dreams, and her unwavering belief in goodness. It was in these quiet moments that Adekunle's heart began to heal from Bukola's betrayal. He realized that wealth had never been the source of fulfillment. It had been an illusion of security. Here, stripped of luxury, he found authenticity, companionship, and trust, the kind that money could never purchase. Yet shadows of doubt lingered. Adekunle occasionally wondered if he had misjudged Bukola, if perhaps her love had been genuine at some point. But then memories of her cruelty, the laughter at his expense, the humiliation, the cold commands, flooded back, extinguishing any flicker of uncertainty. Her betrayal had been complete, and her heart, it seemed, had never truly belonged to him. One particularly hard day, they returned from delivering parcels soaked by a sudden downpour. Mud clung to their shoes, and the water dripped relentlessly from their clothes. Adekunle sank onto the floor of their tiny room, shivering. Kemi knelt beside him, wringing a piece of cloth to wring out excess water, her hair plastered to her forehead. "You're freezing," she said, concern etched on her face. "Sit close to me. Warmth is not just about blankets, you know." Her touch, gentle and caring, reminded him again of what he had truly been missing. Bukola's beauty and wealth could not match the authenticity of this moment. the sincerity of a heart that chose to stand by him when no one else would. In the following weeks, Adekunle and Kemi's bond deepened. They shared not just laughter, but fears and dreams. They planned a life together, imagining a future where they would build their own home, not of bricks and gold, but of trust and mutual respect. They talked late into the nights, whispering plans under the flickering candlelight, sometimes laughing, sometimes just holding hands in silent contentment. And yet, the city remained unforgiving. They struggled to make ends meet, often scavenging odd jobs wherever they could find them, delivering packages, washing cars, assisting local vendors, all tasks that tested their patience and endurance. But each trial brought them closer, transforming hardship into a crucible that forged a love far stronger than Adekunle had ever imagined. Amid these trials, he observed the world differently. The people who had once clamored for a glimpse of his wealth were now invisible. The laughter of the street vendors, the resilience of the struggling families, and the quiet kindnesses of those overlooked by society became his new compass. He began to understand that true worth was measured not by possessions, but by the heart, courage, and integrity one displayed in the face of adversity. One rainy evening, as they huddled under the scant shelter of a small awning after delivering goods, Adekunle turned to Kemi. "I never thought losing everything could feel so right," he confessed, his voice trembling with exhaustion and gratitude. Kemi smiled, her eyes bright despite the pouring rain. "Sometimes, the things we lose teach us what we should never take for granted. We have each other, and that is everything." In that moment, a quiet storm of hope settled over Adekunle. He realized that wealth had never truly defined him. Character, loyalty, and love did. And as the rain washed over the streets, he vowed silently that the next time Adekunle came back into his life, the outcome would be very different. The city may have mocked him as a fallen billionaire, but here, amidst struggle and companionship, Adekunle discovered a treasure far more precious: the unwavering loyalty and love of Kemi, and a heart strong enough to endure, forgive, and triumph. Little did he know, the stage was being set for a dramatic confrontation that would test every ounce of his patience, cunning, and integrity. Adekunle's pride, fueled by ignorance and desire, was preparing to collide with the very truth she had tried to ignore. And when it did, the consequences would be irreversible. The weeks of struggle had forged a bond between Adekunle and Kemi that was stronger than any material wealth. Each shared hardship, each early morning and late-night task, had transformed their connection from companionship to a quiet, unshakable love. Even in their smallest triumphs, selling enough parcels for a modest meal, securing a day's wage, laughing together in the drizzle of an unexpected rainstorm, there was a sense of accomplishment more profound than anything money could buy. It was during one of these rainy afternoons that Adekunle realized he could no longer ignore the truth of his feelings. Kemi, with her unwavering kindness, laughter that warmed the soul, and courage in the face of adversity, had become the center of his world. For the first time, he understood that his heart did not belong to the wealth he had lost or the woman who had betrayed him, but to her. They returned from a day of delivering packages, muddy and exhausted, to their tiny rented room above the workshop. The rain had left the streets glistening, reflecting the flickering city lights like scattered jewels. Adekunle collapsed onto the threadbare mattress, his hands still damp with work, while Kemi wrung out her soaked blouse. "Kemi," he began quietly, his voice trembling with vulnerability, "I know we've been through so much, but I cannot imagine facing the rest of my life without you by my side." Kemi paused, looking up at him with wide, curious eyes. "Adekunle, what are you saying?" He took a deep breath, reaching out to take her hands in his. "I am saying marry me. Not for wealth, not for convenience, not for appearances. Marry me for what we have built together. The honesty, the loyalty, the love that neither wealth nor poverty can touch." For a heartbeat, silence hung between them, broken only by the distant hum of the city. Then, tears welled in Kemi's eyes, and she nodded, whispering, "Yes. Yes, Adekunle. Nothing else matters but us." In that moment, the world seemed to pause. The hardships of the past months, the pain, the struggle, all of it faded into insignificance. For the first time, Adekunle felt truly whole. as if the trials he had endured were stepping stones leading him to the treasure he had sought all along. But fate, as it often does, had one more twist in store. News of Adekunle's engagement to Kemi traveled faster than he could have anticipated. In the grand mansion where he had once lived as a billionaire, Bucola's eyes widened in disbelief as she learned of the union. Pride and desperation collided within her, igniting a fierce and impulsive determination. She would not allow this union to stand, not while she still held memories of the life he had given her, the wealth she had once expected to control. Without hesitation, Bucola rushed to the mansion, her heart pounding and tears streaming down her face. She arrived breathless, her voice trembling as she cried, "Adekunle, please, I love you. I never meant any of it." Inside, the tension was palpable. Adekunle, calm and collected, faced her. He did not speak immediately, allowing the weight of her desperation to fill the space. He studied her expression, noting the glimmer of deceit beneath the false tears, the self-centered urgency that had always defined her. "Bucola," he said finally, his voice steady, yet carrying the authority of someone who had endured and observed. "The deeds to the house, the cars, and everything I gave you are not in your name. They were purchased, built, and maintained by me, not you. Your cruelty, your deceit, and your disregard for true love give you no claim here." Her face fell. Shock, anger, and disbelief contorted her features as she tried to plead further, reaching for his hands, her voice rising in frantic desperation. "Adekunle, please. I was wrong. I will change. I love you." Adekunle shook his head gently, a soft, almost sorrowful smile touching his lips. "Love is not declared in moments of desperation, Bucola. It is proven through loyalty, kindness, and sacrifice. You have shown none of these. The path you chose led to this very moment. I offered you everything, and you chose cruelty." The house, once a symbol of her expected power and status, now seemed to close in around her. The truth of her misjudgment struck harder than any words could. Bucola, once confident and commanding, found herself powerless in the face of the very man she had sought to control. Adekunle turned to Kemi, taking her hand with a quiet, affirming squeeze. "And you," he said, "will walk with me into a life built not on wealth, but on trust, respect, and love. Together, we will face what comes next, and nothing, neither greed, nor deceit, nor false tears, will shake what we have created." Bucola's attempts to persuade, to manipulate, to regain her place, fell on ears that had finally learned the truth. Adekunle's patience, his careful observation, and his steadfast heart had led him to this moment, and no plea could undo it. In the days that followed, Adekunle made a final, decisive move. The mansion and his former possessions, which Bucola had assumed would become hers, were gifted instead to the gateman, the man who had treated Adekunle with respect and decency when no one else had. Along with the gifts came a promise, a steady job, a secure home, and a reward for loyalty that could not be bought. Bucola's world, once filled with expected luxury, collapsed. Her tears, her pleading, and her desperation could not reclaim what she had never truly earned. The stark contrast between her cruelty and Kemi's loyalty became the lesson she could not escape. Wealth may open doors, but character determines the life one will truly lead. Adekunle and Kemi, meanwhile, prepared for a new chapter. Their love, forged in hardship and tempered by trials, had emerged stronger than any wealth or status. The city outside, once a witness to scandal and fall, would now witness a different story, one of triumph, loyalty, and the enduring power of genuine love. Bucola could hardly believe what she was seeing. The mansion she had once treated as her throne, the cars she had assumed were hers by virtue of her relationship with Adekunle, and the very wealth she had tried to manipulate, all of it now slipping through her fingers like sand. Her false tears, her frantic pleas, her promises of change had fallen on ears that no longer wished to listen. She had walked into the confrontation with hope, thinking that a few well-placed words and the memory of past luxuries could sway him. But the Adekunle standing before her was no longer the man who had silently borne her subtle greed, no longer the man who had let her cruelty slide unchecked. He was calm, assured, and resolute, a man who had endured betrayal, observed her heart, and now wielded justice with precision. The truth hit Bucola with the force of a storm. Everything she thought she owned had never been hers. The house, the cars, the lifestyle, all purchases made by Adekunle, deeds held firmly in his name. Not hers. Every laugh she had shared at his expense, every insult she had delivered with pride, now became a mark of her ignorance and entitlement. Her family, who had so readily joined in her mockery, were not spared from embarrassment. Friends and neighbors began to murmur, realizing that the woman who had claimed a billionaire's generosity had been exposed as cruel, selfish, and ungrateful. The shame that had once been invisible now bore down on Bucola like a relentless tide. Bucola's attempts to regain control only accelerated her downfall. She contacted lawyers, claiming her supposed ownership of the mansion and assets, only to be met with cold, factual evidence. Every purchase had been made in Adekunle's name. Banks confirmed the records, and legal documents sealed the truth. Her pride, once a weapon, now became her tormentor, forcing her to confront the full scope of her misjudgment. Outside the mansion, the city buzzed with whispers. Those who had once envied her lifestyle now observed her humiliation with a mix of astonishment and schadenfreude. Social media, that unforgiving mirror of public opinion, erupted with discussions of her greed, her cruelty, and the poetic justice that had finally caught up to her. Bucola, who had once commanded attention, now faced the sting of exposure and ridicule. Meanwhile, Adekunle and Kemi were preparing to move forward, their lives grounded not in wealth, but in loyalty and love. The mansion's doors, once a symbol of Bucola's expected dominion, had been gifted to the loyal gateman who had treated Adekunle with respect when no one else had. With a secure job, a home, and Adekunle's promise of guidance, the gateman's life transformed overnight, a quiet triumph of integrity over entitlement. Bucola's fury, mingled with despair, turned inward. She paced the now empty mansion, her hands trembling, voice raised in impotent rage. How could I have been so blind? How could I have thought he would remain mine after all I did? Her reflection in the polished surfaces of the empty house mocked her. The woman who had wielded power like a weapon now faced the emptiness she had earned. Her social standing, too, began to crumble. The friends who had attended lavish dinners, who had once applauded her status beside a billionaire, now avoided her. The laughter that had fueled her ego evaporated, replaced by awkward glances and murmured judgments. Bucola realized, painfully, that wealth had never created loyalty, and without it, she had nothing. Even her family could not save her. Her parents, who had once basked in the benefits of Adekunle's generosity, were forced to confront the public reality of their daughter's actions. The house they had assumed would be their legacy, the car they had enjoyed as a symbol of newfound status, all legally under Adekunle's control, were no longer theirs. Their shame was compounded by the knowledge that Kemi, a maid they had once looked down upon, had risen with grace and loyalty beside the man they had scorned. Bucola's final humiliation came in a quiet, private moment. She had barged into Kemi and Adekunle's temporary home, hoping to confront them, to reclaim what she imagined was hers. But she was met not with anger, but with calm resolve. Adekunle's eyes met hers, unwavering, and Kemi stood quietly beside him, serene and confident. Bucola, Adekunle said softly, yet with authority, your choices have brought you here. We offered love, loyalty, and respect, yet you chose cruelty, greed, and entitlement. There is nothing left for you here. Your path is yours alone to navigate, but it will no longer intersect with ours. Bucola stood frozen, words failing her. The mansion, once her domain, now symbolized the futility of her desires. The people she had counted on for support had abandoned her in judgment, and the man she had believed she could control, Adekunle, was firmly, irrevocably, beyond her reach. As she left, the reality of her downfall fully settled in. The streets outside, once familiar and full of possibility, now seemed hostile and unforgiving. Every glance reminded her of what she had lost: wealth, status, influence, and above all, the man who had truly cared for her. Bucola had learned the hardest lesson of all, that character and loyalty outweigh material possessions, and that deceit and cruelty inevitably lead to ruin. In contrast, Adekunle and Kemi emerged stronger, bonded by adversity and tempered by hardship. Their love, built on mutual respect and unwavering support, was unshakable. They had endured betrayal, poverty, and humiliation, yet they now stood poised to build a life far richer than anything money could provide, a life defined by love, loyalty, and the quiet triumph of integrity over greed. Bucola's downfall was complete, a stark testament to the consequences of entitlement and deceit. The city would remember the story, the mansion now silent, as a lesson in humility, justice, and the enduring power of true character. The city had become a stage, and for once, the drama was written in colors of justice rather than greed. Adekunle and Kemi emerged from months of struggle, their love hardened and purified by hardship, into a life they had truly earned. The rain-soaked streets, the back-breaking labor, the endless humiliation, all had been a crucible, forging a bond that no wealth could have bought. The mansion, once Bucola's imagined kingdom, was no longer a symbol of entitlement. Adekunle had gifted it to the gateman, the quiet man who had treated him with respect when no one else would. It was not simply an act of generosity, it was a statement of principle. Loyalty, integrity, and kindness were the true currencies of life, and the gateman, who had faithfully served both the house and Adekunle, now held a tangible reward for his unwavering character. Tears welled in the gateman's eyes. I don't know what to say," he stammered. "I never thought. I could thank you, sir." Adekunle placed a firm hand on his shoulder. "No thanks are necessary. You did what was right when it mattered. That alone is worth more than gold." Meanwhile, Kemi stood beside Adekunle, her presence a quiet affirmation of the truth he had always known. Loyalty and love endure where wealth and deception falter. The bond between them had been tempered by hardship, and their love was no longer the tentative spark of affection. It was a blazing, unshakable force. As they walked through the streets together, the city seemed transformed. Where before they had been invisible, now they moved with quiet dignity. People they had passed in struggle, vendors, shopkeepers, and fellow laborers, recognized the calm confidence that came from surviving adversity. Whispers of admiration followed them, not for wealth or power, but for resilience, for courage, for the demonstration that character and love outweigh material gain. Even Bucola, who lingered on the outskirts of this unfolding life, could not ignore the contrast. She had watched Adekunle and Kemi quietly building a future while her own life crumbled around her. Friends she had once counted on had turned away. Social media murmurs mocked her past arrogance, and the mansion she had coveted was now in the hands of a man whose only crime had been kindness. One afternoon, Adekunle and Kemi visited the gateman in his new home. Sunlight streamed through wide windows, casting a warm glow across the freshly painted walls. The gateman's family had moved in, and the once modest house now radiated life, laughter, and love, the very essence Bucola had tried to control with wealth and manipulation. "Thank you, Adekunle," the gateman said again, shaking his hand with a mixture of pride and disbelief. This is more than I ever imagined. I will honor it." Adekunle smiled, glancing at Kemi. "Do not forget, what we build with integrity lasts far longer than what is built with greed. This house, like everything else, is a reflection of choices. Loyalty, honesty, and love endure." Kemi squeezed his hand, her eyes shining with pride. "And you, Adekunle, have shown that even the cruelest trials can bring clarity, justice, and happiness." The lesson had been taught quietly, without spectacle, but the impact was profound. Bucola's downfall, Adekunle's reward, and the gateman's rise created a narrative that resonated far beyond the walls of any mansion. People spoke of it in hushed admiration, of how loyalty triumphed, of how deceit collapsed under the weight of truth, and of how love born from struggle surpassed wealth in every meaningful way. Even as they celebrated small victories, meals shared without worry, evenings spent laughing under flickering candlelight, quiet walks through the city, Adekunle and Kemi remained grounded. They knew that triumph was not measured by possessions, but by character, and the trials they had endured served as a constant reminder of the strength they had cultivated together. And yet, in the shadows of the past, Bucola's presence lingered, not as a threat, but as a cautionary tale. The city remembered her arrogance and her cruelty, and her own experiences became a silent warning. No matter how high one rises through manipulation or entitlement, the truth always finds its path. Adekunle and Kemi, however, moved forward. Their engagement had been quietly announced among close friends and those who had witnessed their journey. Joy replaced struggle, laughter replaced humiliation, and their love became a beacon of hope to anyone who had faced injustice, betrayal, or hardship. The mansion, the wealth, the properties, all were now symbols not of status, but of principle. Adekunle's final act of gifting the mansion to the gateman sealed the lesson. Loyalty, kindness, and integrity are the truest measure of value. Bukola's greed, contrasted with Kemi's loyalty, made the victory even sweeter, a quiet, unassailable triumph of character over entitlement. As the sun set, casting golden light across the city, Adekunle and Kemi stood hand in hand, looking toward the horizon. The journey had been arduous, full of betrayal and suffering, but it had also revealed the essence of life's true treasures. Love, loyalty, integrity. These were the things that endured beyond riches, beyond social expectation, and beyond cruelty. In that moment, they understood it fully. Triumph was not in wealth, but in justice, in loyalty, and in hearts that chose love over greed. The city, once a stage for humiliation and hardship, had become the backdrop for the most meaningful victory of all. The day of Adekunle and Kemi's wedding arrived like the climax of a story long in the making, a celebration not just of love, but of triumph over betrayal, hardship, and cruelty. The sun rose over the city, casting a golden light that seemed to bless every corner, every street, and every heart touched by the journey these two had endured. The venue was modest yet radiant, chosen not for extravagance, but for intimacy and sincerity. Bouquets of wildflowers lined the aisle, their vibrant colors mirroring the life Adekunle and Kemi had built together, bright, resilient, and genuine. Friends who had witnessed their journey, neighbors who had supported them during their struggles, and even the gateman and his family were present to witness the union. Bukola, of course, received her formal notice. Though she had attempted to insinuate herself into their world once more, the wedding was a final, irrevocable statement. Her chapter with Adekunle had ended. She was forbidden to attend. Her protests, full of false tears and manipulative pleas, fell on ears that had long since learned discernment. Kemi, radiant in a simple yet elegant gown, stood at the altar with a calm confidence. Adekunle, in a crisp suit, radiated quiet strength. The months of hardship, humiliation, and struggle had carved resilience into his spirit, and it shone in every gesture, every glance, every quiet smile he offered her. Together, they embodied the victory of love, loyalty, and integrity over wealth, greed, and deceit. The ceremony itself was a blend of tradition and personal significance. Adekunle and Kemi exchanged vows that spoke not of material promises, but of unbreakable commitment. "I promise," Adekunle said, his voice steady and heartfelt, "to stand with you in joy and in struggle, to honor our love above all else, and to build a life defined by respect, loyalty, and truth." Kemi's response mirrored the strength and authenticity that had captivated him from the beginning. "I promise," she whispered, "to walk beside you through every trial, to support and love you with unwavering heart, and to cherish the bond we have forged in honesty, perseverance, and trust." As rings were exchanged, there was a palpable sense of completion, not merely of a wedding, but of a journey. Every struggle they had endured, every hardship, every insult, every lonely night spent dreaming of a better life, had led them to this moment. And the city seemed to respond, the sunlight catching the rings and casting sparkles across the crowd, as if nature itself were celebrating the triumph of integrity and love. Even the gateman, standing proudly beside his own family, felt the weight of the moment. His own journey had mirrored Adekunle and Kemi's, quiet, faithful service rewarded with dignity, home, and stability. When Adekunle spoke to him later that evening, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder, he whispered, "Your loyalty and integrity matter more than any fortune." Today proves that. Meanwhile, Bukola's presence, or rather, her absence, was a silent echo throughout the city. Word had spread of the wedding, and with it, the story of her fall from grace. People whispered about the woman who had scorned love and loyalty in pursuit of wealth, and how her own greed had led to exile from the life she had sought to dominate. The narrative became a lesson, a cautionary tale etched into the memory of all who had witnessed it. Adekunle and Kemi's reception was a joyous celebration. Laughter, music, and dancing filled the air, a stark contrast to the cold nights of struggle they had endured. Friends and neighbors shared stories of their perseverance, highlighting the courage and loyalty that had carried them to this day. Each smile, each clap, each shared embrace underscored the reality that true happiness is born not from possessions, but from relationships grounded in respect and love. As evening descended, the couple stole a quiet moment together on the balcony overlooking the city. The lights below twinkled like stars, reflecting the lives they had touched and the journey they had undertaken. Adekunle held Kemi's hand, feeling the pulse of resilience and hope that had sustained them both. "We made it," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "Through everything we made it." Kemi smiled, leaning her head against his shoulder. "Yes," she murmured, "and we did it together. No wealth, no status, no shortcuts, just us." In that moment, the wedding became more than a ceremony. It was a testament. It was proof that integrity, love, and loyalty could overcome deceit, greed, and cruelty. Bucola's absence was a silent reminder of the choices that lead to ruin, while Adekunle and Kemi's presence radiated the rewards of patience, perseverance, and genuine love. The legacy of their story would endure. The mansion gifted to the Gatemans stood as a symbol of justice and reward for loyalty. Adekunle and Kemi's life together would inspire others to value character over wealth, love over status, and integrity over opportunism. And Bucola, left to reckon with her choices, would serve as a cautionary tale for generations, that entitlement and deceit may shine briefly, but they crumble when faced with truth and virtue. As the night deepened and stars twinkled above, Adekunle and Kemi stood hand in hand, ready to face a future unshackled by the past, strengthened by trials, and guided by the enduring principles of love and loyalty. The journey had been long, the struggle profound, but the triumph, pure, just, and eternal, belonged entirely to those who had chosen the path of righteousness and heart.